speak today about particular hotspots of marine litter. This is just a brief introduction. This is a problem that is worsening. It's affected by ocean currents and has a serious impact on ecosystems and, of course, on us, human beings. To talk about this issue today, we have Tamia, Brito. We also have Patricia, Ostiategui, Yasmina Rodriguez, and David Leon. They're all going to talk to us about these hotspots this morning. Perhaps I have the wrong names listed here. Excuse me. Luana, yes, we also have Luana Ports. Excuse me. Each speaker will have 10 minutes, and afterwards we will have a round of questions and you'll have the chance to speak to them. And if we run out of time, then please feel free to ask them questions during the coffee break. First of all, then, Tamia. Good morning, everybody. Well, I'm here today to talk to you about marine litter and the work that we're doing in the marine reserves. In the Canary Islands, we have 3 marine reserves. The goal of these is to recover living marine reserves and to also control the fishing activity. In Spain, there are 26 marine reserves. 3 of these are located in the Canary Islands. The first to be created was in La Graciosa and the small islands north of Lanzarote in 1995. The second in 1996 in Punta de la Restinga, Mar de las Calmas in El Hierro. And the most recent is in La Palma in 2001. So even in La Palma, there are already 20 years now that we've been relying on this marine reserve. The main things that we do then are collect litter that we find with boats. We also study the impact of this waste on marine ecosystems. When it comes to protected species such as cetaceans and turtles and also seabirds, we're also involved. We also try to involve the public in picking up marine litter, and we also have a number of education and outreach activities in schools across all of the islands. Here we can see some photos of things that we've found. The first picture is something that isn't so common, but it's a result of the ocean currents on the other side of the ocean. This is an ammunition box from America. We can also see lots of fishing nets, plastic waste, and some items of fishing gear. You can see also wheels, tin cans, etc. These are all the types of things that we collect from the sea. We've tried to also carry out an inventory of the coastal impact around the marine reserves. This is all geo-referenced. We know what type of waste is found around the coast, what the potential impact could be on the sea. And here you can see a map of the areas that we are monitoring. The town and municipal governments are the ones in charge of organizing these waste collection. And unfortunately, sometimes this isn't very well managed and people end up fly tipping. There are also cigarette butts found and fishing hooks on the ground around the coastline, etc. As I mentioned, we're involved with protecting these endangered species. This is a project that is active all year round, 365 days of the year. These protected species include some marine sea turtles, some seabirds, and some cetaceans. Oftentimes, these animals are injured because of ingesting plastic, because they get entangled in straw sacks or in fishing nets. We work with the recovery centres for fauna in the Canary Islands, and these injured animals are transferred to either Tenerife or Gran Canaria, depending on which is closer. You can see on the bottom right, unfortunately, this turtle had to have one of his legs amputated because it was entangled in a straw sack. And you can see in the image above this, part of his neck had been cut by a fishing net that he'd become entangled in. So we often also, unfortunately, find dead turtles, and we carry out an autopsy to find out the reason for their death. Another thing that we do is to encourage public participation in litter picking for marine litter. We also work with scuba divers, scuba diving clubs that work in the marine reserves. They often recover used tiles and other types of waste. And here in the picture, we can see a clean-up project involving neighbours of this particular area along the coast. This was a couple of years ago in La Palma, and this was the amount of rubbish that we collected over the course of 2 hours in a 5-kilometre strip. We found a lot of dangerous materials, actually, old batteries, even washing machines. It was quite unbelievable. So, as I say, this is an important part of our work so that local people are aware of the reality of this problem. And finally, one of the key things that we do in the marine reserves, actually we work in this area all over Spain, but particularly in the Canary Islands, and that's education and outreach for in school communities. We try to educate young people about the importance of the ecosystems of these protected areas. We go and give talks in schools that are inside these the areas around these these protected areas and all over the peninsula, the archipelago. We can see in these pictures a workshop that we led in El Hierro. We try to show these young children the type of rubbish that we find in these marine reserves so that they can see with their own eyes the impact of this problem, because, of course, they're too young to go diving to see it for themselves. Around the lighthouse of Fuencaliente in La Palma, there is a museum, an interpretation centre, that was created a few years ago. And the goal of this particular space is to transmit the real effect of this marine litter on the marine environment. The ground of the museum is what you can see on the upper right image. It's made of glass, and you can see through down to the ground where there are examples of the rubbish that we have found in the sea. So it's really quite impactful. I have a couple of minutes left. I did have a video that I wanted to show you, but I will skip over that. Well, thank you very much, and I am here for any questions you may have.
Vale. Bueno, pues después de ver todo el trabajo que se hace en la red.
So now after we've seen the work that's carried out in the marine reserves, I'm going to talk to you about the Canary Islands and the way that waste is managed, because we've seen that it's a hotspot for waste accumulation. And we've also seen a little about the effect that this has on sea turtles. So first I'd like to talk a little bit about what these sea turtles are doing here, where they come from, and the impact that this rubbish can have on them. As you can see from this map, the Canary Islands are in the middle of the circuit that the turtles do across the Atlantic island. They're born along the coast of Florida. They pass by the Azores, Madeira, and the Canary Islands. They are juvenile turtles when they pass by here, and by the time they arrive back in Florida, they are adults. So usually the turtles that we can find here on the islands are, as I say, juveniles. They not only come from Florida, but they also come from Mexico and also Cape Verde. I want to highlight this because what's happening here with the sea turtles in the Canaries has an impact on 3 different communities of turtles. When turtles are very young, they have a high mortality rate, but once they reach 20 centimeters or so, they have a high survival rate. The only reason for them to die would be because of human activity. Florida and Cape Verde contain the most important populations of the loggerhead turtle. The most commonly found turtle here in the Canary Islands is actually the hawksbill turtle. So what happens to these turtles then because of human activity? As Tamia said, on every island we have assistance services for strandings. In Gran Canaria and Tenerife and in Fuerteventura, there are centres that are managed by the island governments. And in the other islands, there are specific private conventions that take care of these turtles. Oftentimes, the turtles are transferred to Tenerife or Gran Canaria, depending on which island is closer or which centre has the best resources for the specific turtle. All of this work wouldn't have been possible without the help of all of the island governments and all of the recovery centres, assistance centres for these turtles. There's been very successful collaboration among all of the islands. So how many turtles are we talking? Well, we can see here from 1987, we started to collect data. This graph goes up to 2019. We're still processing the data for the past couple of years. And you can see the total numbers per year. This is a total of more than 4,000 turtles. We know from our work with other teams in Spain that this is the place where the most turtles are found stranded, particularly when they're still living, but they're entangled. So what happens to these turtles? Well, the 2 main problems. There is entanglement and also ingestion. These are all photos from the Canary Islands. The photo above was taken last year on the Canteras beach in Las Palmas. It's an urban beach, and we can see a turtle tangled in a straw sack, and underneath we can see a turtle that has swallowed the cord of a straw sack. But these aren't the only problems that these animals face.
No son los únicos, pero sí que son el enmayamiento.
They are the most common problems, however, particularly entanglement. That's the most common problem of all. This graph shows the distribution of all of these 4,000 instances that we found stranded turtles. So, as I say, the most common problem was entanglement. The second most common problem is in the unknown category, so we're not sure what actually has happened. Then we have problems with other is the next most common. We also have illnesses, bycatch, spills of oil, petrol, or collision with boats. If we look at the entanglement specifically, we need to look in more detail at what the exact problem was. 70% of the time, we're not sure what these turtles are entangled in. And this is a problem because if we don't identify what the actual material is that they've been entangled in, we don't know what to do about the problem. It's true that in recent years, this percentage has gone down. We are able to discover much more often exactly what the problematic material has been. But in any case, when we are able to identify, the most common material is fishing nets, and then followed by nylon fishing lines. This is a problem in the Balearic Islands and Cyprus as well. But interestingly, it's not a problem in other parts of the world. Here we have some photos of turtles that have been entangled in these straw sacks. In one case, we can even see the name of the company that this sack came from. We can see some turtles in nylon fishing lines and others entangled in fishing nets. Thankfully, all of these turtles were freed and they were returned to the sea. Turtles, luckily, are very tough animals, and so generally speaking, they're able to recover. But often, it does have an impact. Sometimes it's just a case of small injuries on the flippers, as you can see in these images. They're able to heal on their own. Sometimes, however, the injuries are so severe that they require amputation. Unfortunately, the injuries are just too severe to find a solution, as you can see with this turtle on the right. A sea turtle is able to survive with one flipper missing, thankfully. And sometimes injuries can occur on the neck. This is another area where animals are usually able to heal. The other problem then is to do with ingestion. European projects have helped us to monitor the turtles that arrive, in our case, in the recovery center in Gran Canaria. We monitor the excretion of these animals to find out what they've ingested. All of the turtles that arrive at our center have ingested some kind of sea litter, some more, some less, but in all cases, they have ingested this waste. And here we can see the effects. In many instances, the animals are able to just simply excrete it, and it's no problem. However, sometimes the animals do arrive dead, and in this case, in the autopsy, we're able to investigate the reasons for their death, and many times it's because of plastic building up in their digestive system. This is a picture of a leatherback turtle. And we've also found in a recent study that the turtles that have arrived at our center, when they have become entangled, they've also ingested some of the material that they've been entangled in. In order to monitor this impact on sea turtles, then, it's important to harmonize our efforts, to know what we're all measuring. There is a protocol that has been translated into 8 different languages to study the entanglement of sea turtles and biota in marine debris. And if you search for the Indesit project, you will be able to find more information, or please feel free to reach out to me personally if you can't find it. These are European projects, but now we can see a Canary Island project that was launched a couple of years ago in line with the SDGs. The idea was to design a form that would be standard for all of the island that people can use to write down what they've been entangled in and to keep a better record of the problems. And that's it from me. If you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Yasmina.
Good afternoon. My name is Yasmina. I'm from the University of the Azores, and I'd like to talk to you about a project that I carried out in collaboration with many centres and many other researchers. I will mention them at the end. The goal of this project is to promote the Cory shearwater as a species that could help to monitor ocean plastics in hotspots of marine litter. I wanted to talk with a little bit of information about ocean currents. I'm sure you know that these surface level or ocean gyres or gyres, these have a big impact on marine litter. Here you can see that this North Atlantic subtropical gyre also links with the North Equatorial current and also the Gulf Stream, which of course passes by Madeira and our islands. So these regions, although they are remote with low populations, for instance the Azores, they don't have many industries, but despite all of this, they receive a lot of marine litter. In 2015, we began a research project studying water surface and the coastal areas. And we found huge amounts of litter. In this case, you can see more plastic than sand on the beach. There are some very easily recognizable plastic objects, but most of the time it's micro or mesoplastics that we come across. We have oftentimes had huge tidal waves of these waste products on our coastal areas. The Implamac project that was presented yesterday by Javier has helped us, along with other Interreg projects, to study these accumulation zones. What we found is that the plastic arriving on islands are all quite similar in type. As you can see, these are mostly small pieces of plastic, mostly white, sometimes blue or yellow. And this helps us to know what the different species are ingesting. It's vital to continue to study these areas, but we're faced with certain logistical problems and economic problems. We would like to, for instance, hire a boat and a crew to go out to sea to do some research, but this costs money. It also costs money to employ trained staff to help us with our initiatives. So we end up with very few samples per year, and they're also very influenced by the climate conditions of that time, by these currents. Sometimes we can find very low concentrations of plastic, and another time we can find huge concentrations. So what we need are European policies to help us with this. When these European projects ask us for reliable data, we're unable to provide it. So we had the idea of using certain species of animals as bioindicators of the impact of marine litter. So far, we've found seabirds to be the most suitable species, particularly the Cory's shearwater. In one of the first presentations today, it was mentioned that the OSPA Commission uses other species. They use the northern fulmar, for instance, from the 80s. The problem with this species is that it's mostly located in high latitudes, so our particular archipelago wouldn't be able to use it. The Cory's shearwater is present in the Azores, Madeira, and the Canaries. These are the areas that we carry out our studies. But there is also a population in Portugal, in Galicia, and in the Mediterranean. There are also related species in the Mediterranean that also ingest plastic. So if we were to use this species to monitor plastic, we would be able to comply with what OSPA is asking us and also the regulatory framework. We know that the Cory's shearwater builds its nest in dark spaces. In October to November then, when the chicks are born, a big problem is light pollution. They become disoriented and they need to be rescued. In the Azores, there is a very, very big rescue campaign, much more than the campaigns that exist here. For instance, last year in the Azores, they saved more than 6,000 birds. Unfortunately, not all of them were saved. Many of these birds are run over by cars. They often fall in the petrol tanks around the ports. So when we find these dead animals, we carry out an autopsy to find out what they've ingested. You can see here on the left the stomachs of 2 Cory's shearwaters, and on the other side we have what we found from trawling through plankton. We can see lots of pieces of hard plastic, white color usually. We can see remains of fishing lines, some pellets. And so what we've found with this is that these animals aren't choosing specific types of plastic. They're just eating whatever they find. And it helps us to discover what's happening. We have 25 years of data now. We have information on more than 1,500 birds. You can see the fledglings that suffer from higher mortality rates because they're the ones that suffer from this light pollution. And 94% of these fledglings have ingested plastics. This is something that happens every year. A very high proportion of birds that we find have ingested plastic. These birds, once we've found them, have gone to find their own food. It's not the food that their parents have given them.
Las crías.
Rather, the fledglings, what they have in their stomach, is the result of what their parents have brought to the nests. And so we can see this transgenerational effects in the birds' families. This graph is a little bit more complex. You can see the number of plastics above and the main types of plastics below. This will help us to predict what the effects will be in future years. We can see that this type of contamination in the sea is quite constant. And this information is useful for programs in the future that will be put together by governments. So, in summary, we believe that the Cory shearwater is a key species for a bioindicator in this part of Europe, which still is lacking a useful indicator to monitor marine litter. These are the people that were part of this study. Thank you very much to the organisation for bringing me here, and thank you for the help from all of our funders.
Hola, buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David, and I'm representing HD Association, and I'm here to present a project which is Intermares Artes Perdidos, Lost Gears, which is a series of actions included within the Intermares project, which is being developed in different marine regions for the integral management of the sea. And this action in ALDF is focused on the management of a specific type of marine litter, which are lost and abandoned fishing gears. Within this project, Intermares, the lost and abandoned fishing gears are defined as complete or partially gears that have been found in the sea that for any reason have lost their functionality and are out of the control of its owner, which can be found in the surface or in the bottom of the sea or in any other location. So the objective of this project is to raise awareness of this problem and to mitigate the problem caused by these elements, as well as to categorize the different elements and providing different types of categorization of typologies so they can be studied. These elements, we need also to define what are the negative effects these gears have on the existing habitats, and especially to promote participation and shared commitment to support management and solutions for this problem. There is an important factor here, which is communication. That's because the project is finishing at the moment and most tools have been already finalized. But there is one of these, there is a video here that one is as part of our communication campaign.
Toneladas de artes de pesca. Los artes de pesca perdidos o abandonados son un tipo de basura marina. Se pueden encontrar tanto en el fondo como a la deriva y pueden ser un riesgo para el medio marino e incluso la seguridad de las personas. En la iniciativa Intermares Artes Perdidos tenemos un propósito: mejorar la gestión de los APA en todas las demarcaciones marinas españolas y especialmente en los espacios de la red Natura 2000. Con la participación de los agentes clave hemos puesto en marcha 3 herramientas. 1. Un protocolo de actuación, fruto del consenso, que indica cómo actuar ante un hallazgo de un APA. 2. Vídeos tutoriales con ejemplos prácticos sobre qué hacer en casos reales. 3. Una aplicación web colaborativa que permite geolocalizar e inventariar los artes perdidos para facilitar su retirada. Una sociedad responsable tiene mares saludables. Conoce más en artesperdidos.es.
Bueno,
con la contribución financiera del programa LIFE de la Unión Europea.
Eso tiene que salir.
Sorry, that's something we had to keep. So I want to spend some time of my presentation showing you this because it explains very specifically the concrete actions of our actions, which are four. So you can see that one of them is creating a protocol agreed with all the stakeholders to manage the whole process from finding a ALDFG to the last stages that going through characterization and the whole processing of the item. Then also we have a tool to include this into the inventory, so then they can be used by technicians to create specific actions that bring along different actions and to also establish certain parameters of the retrieval of the items. That was aimed at the Red Natura 2000 spaces, but now we are thinking about other territories outside this project with whom we are currently holding meetings so we can implement this system. The document and its structure are based on a chart to create or to describe the operations that we carried out from the moment the item is found until it is disposed and compensated, and then we create different types of information and data describing the risks, the potential risk we may encounter, and also the different stages of identification, as well as all the issues related to fishing directives, security, etc. And this is so because the protocol itself is the central axis that has been developed since June 2021, and many of you have participated in the different stages of this project that has gone through different workshops and consultation processes. And actually, we held the last workshop last week in our premises with more than 50 people participating. And this has already been drafted, and it will be available really, really soon so it can be implemented. With regards to the database, it's a repository that has been updated so it can be consulted by any entity, or it can be fed by any institution, so the protocol can work even better, or to apply the protocol itself. So this application, thanks to the different projects that have been involved in this process, including Oceana, OceanNet, Vertido Zero, through the MarNova application, through the network of sea surveillances and subredes project, they have helped us to we have created this website that you can see here, where you can find loads of information about our work. And in there you can see also some maps, geo-referenced maps, where you can see all the different items that have been found through the different projects. And maybe you can add here your own data through your own profiles. And there's also some sections where you can export data, which are you can access freely, and then you can filter all these items through different aspects such as size or material, etc. And this is sent to you through the CSV format. But you can also export data through a more graphical way. As you can see here, for instance, in this specific element, you can see that we're talking about 914 elements, and then you've got plenty of information about this one. I'll now show you, I'll go back to the presentation now. So here we can see 5 areas with 5 projects, and we have created a different video for each one of these regions. Each one of them lasts 5 minutes, and we have done so in collaboration with different collaborators and stakeholders. And also we can see the different types of waste that is being collected For instance, the observatory in Fuerteventura that has collaborated in the Canary Islands. And also you can see here, maybe I can show you, if I've got time, we can show you a part of a video so you can see what we are talking about. So I also brought some data, some specific data about the Spanish archipelagos, but since I think I'm running out of time, I encourage you all to get into the application and see the data yourself. And you can create a profile, you can request a profile for yourself, and then you can access all the data, because it's interesting to understand how the information is being managed and how we can interact in a so very fast way with the parties, so it is not abandoned for longer, or maybe it can be removed as soon as possible. This is some of the entities that have participated throughout this process. So thank you very much for your attention. My name is Luana, and now we're going to the Colombian Caribbean. The idea here, and now it works, yes. The main idea is to present some results of some expeditions that are being developed in the Colombian Caribbean through the Colombian Commission for the Oceans and the Colombian Army. They organize every year an expedition to some islands that are located at the Seaflower Reserve of the Biosphere, which are inhabited and non-inhabited islands, and the main idea is to carry out these expeditions to get a better picture of what we can find there. These expeditions usually have between 30 and 40 researchers from different areas, including geologists or biologists, and this is to create a general picture of what we can find in those sectors. This is a project tackling waste management in these islands. We don't have specific details on the detail of the data on this presentation, but we have already published 3 papers on this. So if you are interested, please refer to these publications for further details. The methodology we are using at the moment for sampling always uses the beach and post-beach stages in order to understand how waste is moving between ecosystems. In most of these expeditions, and not in all of them, because sometimes we have different aspects to analyze. We analyze mangroves, touristic beaches, coral reefs, and the structure of the sand. So we have a general idea of the whole environment. The vegetated post-beach stage doesn't include dunes, but we include the vegetation and also the coral reefs, because especially in the case of scuba diving tourism. In this case, especially, we had 3 scuba divers working on this project, and we check the waste in these ecosystems. I selected some information with regard to these studies, and we have to say that the reserve has 2 inhabited islands, Santa Catarina and Salamandra, and Samandrash, the results we got there, shows us an influence of beach users. What caught our eye here is that the farther they are from the urban center, the greater amount of waste we found. The islands that are cleaned every day are clean, while other islands have a very beautiful scenery, but we can find a great amount of especially hazardous waste, including pieces of glass. And that was the line that we started to analyze the data on this on this island. And we also concentrated on this atoll, which is with collaboration with the army. And here we could see the influence of ocean streams within the reserve. Here you can have a general overview of the different waste found. So we can, and here you can see you can see how these waste is being transported to these islands by the ocean action. On this island, I don't know if you can see, but there are different points with different colors which represent the concentration, the total concentration of plastic, which are analyzed every 10 meters. So we have 71 points in total because it's a very small island, and then we can get validation through wave modeling and bearing into consideration the influence of wind as well, in order to validate the influence of water streams in the distribution of waste around the island, rather than studying the waste that is collected on one specific area of the island. We can't analyze any other factors because the island doesn't have any kind of industry, so this is the only element we have for analysis. And finally, in the island of Providencia is Santa Catalina, which is an inhabited island, but it's not as touristic as São Andrés. And it also has different ecosystems. So the main exercise we carried out was observing the exchange of waste in both ecosystems and where are located the main hotspots in terms of waste accumulation. So the main hotspots are mangroves and the post-beach, vegetated post-beach areas. Here you can see some pictures to give you some context about the island. It's a Caribbean island that is full of vegetation, and this makes it possible that this is located, or the waste is located within the vegetal land ecosystems. Here in the underwater, you can see also some waste, but not as many as we expected at the beginning. That made us very happy. And the main exercise was to create this chart to start to understand how waste is exchanged among the ecosystem, not only through the type of waste, but also its characterization. We had some ideas which are described in the papers we have published, but we can see that mainly the difference between beach and post-beach are transferred through wind, but also the cleaning of these beaches also make it possible that the waste is transferred from one part to another. Because if waste is located in the back of the beach, then there's no problem. But at some point, we could see some specific accumulation, and that made us think how this waste got there. With mangrove, we found some similarities with the beach waste because they are deposited in those areas in the same way. But also, this mangrove area was part of a reserve with no direct access of people, namely tourists or locals. So we also understood that this waste was mainly brought by these streams. So, but another element that caught our attention was that the coral reefs, the nearby coral reefs, had very low impact. But so we understood that there's not a direct transference from the waste arriving to the mangrove into the coral reefs. And also, mangrove are not that good at catching or absorbing this waste. At the moment, we are assessing the data of an expedition on the same island following a hurricane that destroyed the entire mangrove system as well as the rest of the structure of the island. Around more than 50% of the constructions in the island were damaged. So we can see certain levels of variation because the mangrove was deteriorated and the waste went back into the system. and some of that waste was cleaned. So there is a network that is working there, so we are analyzing the data to reach some conclusions. So the island has many hotspots, and all animals are affected, and we are going to suggest some actions. But these actions, again, are very little if compared to greater actions in other areas. And this is why, from now on, from our data collected from different islands and different characteristics, we will apply this knowledge to our new strategy. This is my contact details. If you have any interest in exchanging information or reading our papers, don't hesitate to talk to me after the event. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. And now they are all open to answer any questions you may have for the next hour. Thank you for your presentations. My question is for Tamia and David, and also for the rest of projects, of course, but I'm curious. My name is David. I am coordinating the Eco Areas project of the Canary Islands government. My question is for Tamia and David again. I would like to know, how was the relationship with the fishermen community in your projects? Were they involved? Was it positive? Was it negative? Have you encountered many problems? Have you solved them in a specific way? Yes, this is, of course, this can happen. There are people who are interested in this, of course. And we have also carried out different projects, not directly with the fishermen, but also supported by some communities, as it happened in El Hierro, in La Restinga. And we carried out different projects to retrieve items or waste from the sea, and this bore some fruit. One of them is the bench that you can see outside that was manufactured with those waste. But of course, there are all the fishermen who do not collaborate. In our daily work with fishermen in general, within the reserves, we explain to them the importance of collecting that marine litter and how this has an impact on the fish communities and how they are affected by this. So it's not just an environmental issue, but also a topic that is affecting the product they fish. So it is more and more common to see different types of different species of fish carrying plastic in their stomachs, which affect the people who buy the product. So more and more, this message is becoming more and more naturalized for fishermen, but still there's a long way to go, especially with young people who are getting into this industry, and they have to understand this is a problem affecting everyone, not only just them or the green or the ecologists. Because it is also affecting the product they fish every day, that it's eventually sold to the general public, to all of us, and it's also caused by all of us who, in one way or another, are creating waste. Yeah, I'll just like to support this last idea. We are moving forward in terms of communication, and we are also launching different initiatives with certain fishermen communities in this sense. In our case, in the Intermares Artes Perdidos project, bearing in mind that within the LIFE project, the fishing authorities are included there, and one of the stakeholders having contacted there are some fishermen associations that have participated in a very active fashion in this project by reporting losses, especially in terms of protocol management, or how this protocol is applied when different fishing gears cannot be recovered, so they are automatically considered lost or abandoned fishing gears, and how this should be tackled by fishermen. Of course, there's not many associations have participated, but some of them have. Just one point about this ALDFG. We do collaborate with entities and these associations when they report ALDFG. So we have professional divers who can be contacted, and then they can retrieve and rescue these ALDFG. So it is automatically retrieved once it is lost, if it's possible, of course. Good morning. All your speeches have been very interesting, but there is a point I would like to highlight here, and it's the ALDFG. How important do you consider them? Because sometimes in terms of logistics, it's a very complex task. And of course, we do need to have professional divers to help us, because we do need, I mean, now that I see that you are geolocalizing or geolocating the ALDFG, it's essential. So, but in the daily work, it is essential. So we can to have actions like this in place, so we can help, and especially from all of us that are watching from outside. We can see this just as a simple data, but it goes beyond being data of where the ALDFG are located. We need to know where they are so they can be retrieved or where they can be collected back. So it's precious information, and maybe sometimes this has been a step forward, and especially when we talk about in the sea bottom, it's more complex. So I think your work is essential in this sense. No, muy bien por ahora. Okay. There's a question here. I have a question for Yasmin. My name is Michael from Ingeson Project. On the one hand, I would like to know if microplastics of the shear water inside their stomachs, do we know if they are eating them directly, or is it because the fish they eat are contain or have already eaten the plastic? And the other question is for David. I think it's very interesting, your proposal to identify where the ALDFG are located. Once these nets are lost, the fishermen cannot continue fishing in that area because they can the new nets can entangle with the ones that are in the bottom of the sea, and this can only be done. They can only be retrieved by professional scuba divers or the armed forces. So, how are you working with volunteers in this sense? Can volunteers participate on following a legal framework, or is it something that you expect to do in the future? Talking about the ingestion mechanism, it is really difficult to determine whether these birds are eating this plastic through the diet or how it is. I think we can discard the diet because we have analyzed many fish stomachs, but most of these microplastics fish ingest are the invisible microplastics, while the birds are ingesting visible microplastics. So through the other mechanisms, which is the accidental, because they are ingesting it by accident, or whether they are selecting that, maybe we think that it's more likely that they are ingesting accidentally, because the pieces they are ingesting are very little, and also they can be it can be, they can think that this is fish. If compared to albatrosses, maybe they can have some confusion and take these plastic as part of their diet because they think it's part of their diet. So it's very difficult to understand if it's accidental or not. This is the next step in our project. So we need to understand this ingestion mechanism. Can I? Yeah. I think there's another question. I'll be brief. Yeah. Answering your question about the role of scuba divers is one of the aspects we have focused the most in our protocol, because most of the elements that are lost and found are located in recreational scuba diving areas. And in fact, the most extensive area of the protocol is focused on the general criteria to collect ALDFG with autonomous scuba diving actions. And thanks to the action on the work of different associations of different associations operating in Spain and outside Spain, what we are suggesting is that recreational scuba divers help in the alert stage. This is a practice that is becoming more and more popular because we are seeing that there are more and more cleaning actions in the bottom of the sea, and there they collect different fishing gears, including small pieces like threads or rods sometimes. And what we suggest is that we geolocate those areas, and then they are retrieved by accredited associations to collect them. So depending on the different natural spaces, we see that there is a structure in place. For instance, we see in some areas they do have professional scuba divers, but in some areas there are more technical or professional scuba divers who carry out this activities on demand. So what we are trying now is that to promote that scuba divers, professional scuba divers, just inform about the location of a specific gear, so then they can be retrieved by associations that follow a structure.
I have a question for Alwana. My question then is, how far do your evaluations go? Do you look at potential alternatives? For instance, maybe we should talk about this in the coffee break. But in any case, I was quite impressed to hear about how you identify these hotspots. And, well, as we're with Caroline here as well, I wanted to also mention how interesting it is that we receive litter from other territory, for instance, Venezuela, etc. So I want to know if your research includes this. Do you look at where the litter actually comes from? Do you look at potentially, potential solutions? Well, yes, thank you very much for your question. The expedition has a lot of people involved. Always, at the end of the expedition and at the beginning of the next one, during this whole period, what we do is organize events involving the whole island. We have this perception that the island is very small. I mean, San Andres, you can circumnavigate it in just 1 hour. So it's, I suppose, fairly easy to reach the decision makers Also, local governments, managers of the national parks, etc. There is a very direct communication and information exchange. So when an organisation is carrying out a scuba dive, we're there ready with our rubbish bags. We work directly with politicians, because oftentimes political decisions are what lead actions that take place rather than environmental reasons. I think around 10 years ago, all of these things started to be studied, geology, etc. There's a lot left to do. So over 4 years, there were 4 expeditions, and that's what we have. Before that, we had absolutely no data at all. So I would say that as we're quite a small territory, it is quite easy when it comes to communication. Any more questions?
No, pero puedes escribir.
No, no necesito. No, termina.
No, yo quería preguntar para ellos después.
Ah, vale, pues. Pregunto yo. Patricia, ¿cómo identificáis qué es el impacto de las basuras de Canarias?
So, Patricia, what do you think is the impact of rubbish that comes from the Canary Islands in comparison to rubbish that comes from elsewhere? Well, with this Indesit project, this European project, it includes Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Tunisia and Turkey. When we started to analyze the results, we found that the turtles that were entangled, that arrived in the Canary Islands, they often were still alive. In other places, that isn't so. So we think for that reason, perhaps they've become entangled closer to the coast than in other places. That's why we've been able to find them more quickly. It might also be to do with the type of rubbish. It's true that the rubbish that they've become entangled with may or may not come from the Canary Islands. We're not sure. That's why we're encouraging now to take photos every time an entangled turtle is found, because then it's easier to find where this rubbish has come from. Sometimes the company name can be found on the straw sacks. Often we find these illegal palanges, these illegal fishing nets from Africa found around the area of Morocco. So we know where they've come from. So now we've got these images to work with, it's easier to find the origin. When a turtle is found with a fishing hook, we speak with experts who are able to tell us what type of fishing the hooks have been involved with.
Para vosotras, Patricia y Yasmina, yo creo que la pregunta vale para las.
I have a question now for Yasmina and Patricia. There are some species of marine animals that I think are good indicators. You've talked about seabirds, turtles. What other species could be good indicators? Or have you found that some aren't good indicators? Well, when it comes to turtles, the first was the northern fulmar in North Europe. Its characteristics were very suitable because it didn't have a particular type of food source. It ate lots of different things, and it was also present in the south of Europe. That's why the northern fulmar was chosen. We carried out a study on turtles, and we found that they were also suitable. And so I'll pass the mic now to my colleague to talk about the shearwaters. Well, different species will indicate different types of plastic. So the northern fulmar is similar to the Cory's shearwater because they ingest small particles. When it comes to turtles, they often ingest more easily identifiable objects. So we can use that information for mitigation efforts to avoid, for instance, the production of plastic bags. Because we know that these turtles confuse certain types of plastic with food that is common for them. In the Azores, we don't discover as many dead animals. And when we do find animals, they are often of different ages. They have different health standards. Sick turtles end up ingesting more plastic because of their illness. Perhaps they're not able to find any other food, and that's why they end up eating plastic. When we find fledglings that have died because of other reasons, not plastic injection, well, that tells us it's a healthy indicator. So in any case, every species is a good indicator for specific things. Any questions in the room? David, do you have any information sources to show us potential improved ways of taking this litter out of the sea? Yes. There are specific applications of the protocol according to different characteristics. So over time, we've spoken to the people that we collaborate with to choose a particular part of the protocol and carry out a specific activity, for instance, with entangled turtles. And what we do is we ask those people who are more familiar with the habitat and the area to explain how the activity should be carried out. There are some videos. I'll put them on at the end. There are 5 different videos. I think they give a lot of information, actually. They give some good examples. I think it's perhaps easier to understand when we see them. If you like, we can put them on. If we have time, yes, we will put them on. Yes, I wanted to ask you one thing. You said that when the fisher folk found nets, they had to call it in, and then a specialized team went out. Is that right? I want to know how they're found. Well, the nets are found floating all over the sea. The nets that arrive here, where we are, usually come from ocean currents, or these African nets that are found on the seabed as well. So the large marine litter that we receive often comes from Mauritania or the Caribbean, much further away. They don't come from the Canary Islands. They come as a result of these ocean currents. We're often talking about kilometers of connected entangled nets, which could be potentially hazardous for fishing boats. We carried out a socio-economic study of the impact of these fishing nets or marine litter for tourists and for users of the sea, particularly fisher folk. For instance, the nets could affect the engines. These fisher folk may not be able to work, and there is a lot of associated economic damage, so they collaborate with us. So my question for you, or perhaps for the floor, anyone from the Canary Islands, I'd like to know if there is a study being carried out to try to define what the economic cost is. Well, I think that these fisher folk do call it in when they come across a net like this to try to have it collected. Usually, in fact, captains are obliged to call in large objects that they find in the sea because they could be hazardous. We've sometimes had to actually jump into the sea to try and disentangle these objects from boats. When it comes to collecting these ALDGF, these abandoned objects, you have to take great care because sometimes in diving areas that aren't necessarily in protected areas, but they have their own access points. And sometimes the divers themselves disentangle these objects and release the fish. This could be problematic because sometimes they may be creating more problems than they solve. And so I think that the protocol should take this into account because taking on a large piece of ALDGF, an abandoned piece of marine waste, could be very dangerous. They may cut themselves. So although the intention may be good, they must be aware of the task that they're trying to undertake. It's not the same as picking up a plastic bag or a tin from the bottom of the sea. A large ALDFG is potentially, as I say, dangerous. Any more questions from the floor? Yes, actually, when it comes to communication, well, that's ultimately the function of this event, no? To give visibility to all of these issues. If we focus on communication from now on, specifically highlighting the importance of identifying what these objects are that we're finding underwater, I think what we should do is advise divers and etc. to simply call these problems in, not take on the problems themselves. Sometimes, there is a series of indicators that help to define whether or not it should be disturbed, this marine waste, because perhaps it is attached very securely to the seabed, and there are all kinds of things to take into account when it comes to deciding whether or not to remove this type of litter. I have a question, actually. It's for Yasmina, but perhaps it's a question for everybody. Do you work on correction techniques or the cause of impact? I mean, are you trying to look at the cause of the impact that you're seeing in these hotspots? Well, we're just one actor in this whole film, so the scientists like us, we collate data, we use it to show the authorities what the problems are, and then the authorities have to put in place these monitoring programs on land or at sea to find a solution. So the scientific community is involved with this outreach then. For instance, when it comes to microplastics, I don't think anyone has a solution. We're all talking about potential solutions, yet the plastics industry is unstoppable. We're still consuming plastics every day. Yes, when it comes to solutions, as Yasmina said, We're scientists. We carry out research. We collate data. And it's true that we are managing to achieve some things with this data, with the Indesit project when it comes to these straw bags. We saw the impact in the Canary Islands of this European project. And when the European politicians saw the result, they were really quite impressed. And if this study hadn't been carried out, if we hadn't revealed what the impact of the problem was, then we wouldn't have discovered that this specific type of plastic that hadn't been considered before was causing all of these problems. So it takes time. We have to collate a lot of data. But it's true that sometimes we do have success stories. If we manage to give that data to Europe, then they're not able to wave us away, you know? It becomes harder for them to ignore the problem. I just wanted to give my opinion. We work with lots of different sectors. When the diving community see a problem underwater, they communicate it to the authorities, and oftentimes nothing happens. They see weeks later that it still is there, and so they take matters into their own hands without taking the necessary safety measures. So I think perhaps local government needs to have more resources to deal with these problems. Right now, we have a particular problem with a particular type of shark, and when there is a dead specimen, we're not able to get into the water around it, and we need authorities to go and remove it before we can return to that area. So we need our governments to have the right resources to deal with this, because otherwise citizen efforts are lost. Yes, I completely agree with your point. One of the tools, though, that has been put in place to assist with what you were commented on, sometimes a long time passes before anything is done about a problem that's reported. So now we have this immediate alert. If this object is of a particular size, or is new, or is causing problems, or requires immediate attention, in this case, then it will pop up as an alert to the manager of that sector. This alerts could be used in different protected marine spaces in the different autonomous communities. We would need to have the direct contact details for the people in charge of dealing with these problems so that the information is passed directly to them. This would help for a more effective and efficient management of these problems. There is also, within this tool, the opportunity for the person in charge of dealing with this problem to leave feedback. Well, Michael, we've known each other for a long time. The other day I received a video from a colleague. They're involved with monitoring sea litter in the Canaries. They found some diving oxygen bottles entangled in some plastic at the bottom of the sea. Apparently it was supposed to be some kind of artwork under the sea or museum. It looked more like rubbish to me. But lots of people are doing very strange things, not just fisher folk, and we need to raise awareness of this. I think, of course, money is key. We need more resources. But what we also need is more outreach activities at schools. Put this on school curricula. In my own experience, I've been working for 21 years with fisher folk, with their families. And ultimately, it's the children that are nagging their parents to do things better. So, aside from the resources that we invest, we need to understand that every one of us are responsible for this problem. Of course, the government is key, but every human being consumes and throws away plastic. When you pick something off the shelves that is wrapped up in 4 layers of plastic, you've decided to pick that up and put it in your shopping basket. So each one of us has a responsibility, and we need to instill this in our children as soon as they're able to understand, because if we wait until they're 15 or 16, they don't pay as much attention. We need to get them when they're young. And this has been a good approach for us. It's been successful. I think money, as much money as possible, should be spent on training, on outreach, on education. Because a congress like this doesn't involve small children. And our kids know about what National Geographic are doing all over the world, but they need to learn about what we're doing here as well. I have one final question, because I think it would be really useful to put your videos on, David. So I'd like to leave time for that. Is it possible to play these videos? Great. Well, put David's videos first. I wanted to ask you one final question, because Patricia showed a seasonal pattern in the graphs that she showed, but for Tamia and Luana, I would like to know if these exist too. Are there any seasonal patterns in the hotspots that you monitor? So 2 questions. Are there seasonal patterns? And if they do exist, how does that impact the ecosystems in areas outside of these hotspots? Yes, for us, yes, there are seasonal patterns that are basically a result of these ocean currents. We're very affected by them to a greater or lesser extent in different areas. We're also affected by the use of the coast. Of course, in the summer, there are lots more people on the beaches. There are lots more people fishing, throwing rubbish, etc. So on the coasts, yes, there is a bigger problem during the summer because of tourism. And the Canary Islands is a huge tourist spot, and so the tourist areas are also the places that are most affected. So you would say, yes, I mean, the large pieces of debris that arrive here come, for instance, from Ireland, from species of shark that come from Northern Europe that don't exist here. Plus all of the rubbish that's generated here, this will all go to Cape Verde. It will continue these ocean currents. Well, I have an example from the south of Brazil. We looked at comparing beaches and sand dunes in summer and winter. There was an influence from the local community. So during the summer, there are lots more tourists on the beaches and the dunes. And there is a more consistent arrival of sand because there tend not to be stronger tides and storms. In the winter then, what happens is there's more wind, and so the litter that is left over from the summer period arrives at the dunes because of these winds. So we have the waste that is created on the beaches in the summer that travels to the dunes in the winter. And this is linked to do with the uses of the beaches, as I say. This is the case in Brazil. In the Caribbean, it's different because you can use the beaches all year round, like you can here. Of course, before you find a solution, you need to study the very local context of a problem. And we're not as directly affected by ocean currents as you are here. Well, in our case, with turtles, we tend to find more turtles in the spring and summer because there just happen to be more turtles in the ocean around here more. And there are also more people on the beaches to find those turtles. We also find more on beaches that are more visited than those that are more remote. So what we're thinking about doing now is carrying out sampling all year round for these key bioindicator species. In the Canary Islands, then, we're, for instance, trying to make sure that there are 10 samples carried out every month to try and get a better idea of these variations. I mean, essentially with these animals, it depends on their reproductive cycles as well. Yes, when it comes to the Cory shearwater, the adults feed their young during 3 months. And so those were the 3 months that we carried out our study. We found that they feed very close to the African coast. Meso and microplastics are very dynamic. They're influenced by currents, by climate conditions, by extreme climate events, climate change. Occasionally in the Azores, actually more and more, we're having more serious storms. So it's really hard to identify seasonal patterns. We're trying to find them with this Implement project. If you remember the photo I used in my presentation with the photo with the fragments, when we take a sample there, we take it to the lab and we classify the sample. It's really hard work. And so to be able to identify seasonal patterns would involve so many samples that it's just not economically viable. Any more questions then? Well, thank you very much, everyone. Let's use this last 50 minutes to show these videos. Well, just one more comment. As I said, these are 5 videos that show different typologies that are identified in the protocol. Each video is actually 5 minutes long, but we're just going to watch a short summary of each. You will see different activities carried out in different areas. Some are with professional divers, others with swimmers or sailors rather. Others are with divers who are recreational divers. So I think in any case that it will be able to help you to understand what we're doing.
Un arte de pesca perdido o abandonado se define como cualquier arte de pesca o parte del mismo que permanece en el mar sobre el que su propietario ha perdido el control, ya sea deliberadamente o por otros motivos. Los artes de pesca perdidos o abandonados son un tipo especial de basura marina, cuya gestión implica a distintos sectores de la sociedad. Intemares, Artes Perdidos, desarrolla una serie de actuaciones para dar a conocer, inventariar y gestionar este tipo de residuos en sus distintas modalidades. Entre estas actuaciones se encuentran las acciones demostrativas. Estas se enmarcan dentro del proyecto Life Intemares.
Estamos en el puerto de Almerimar, en Almería, en la demarcación marina Estrecho Alborán, con Ricardo Sagarminaga de Alnitac. Hoy estamos en Fuerteventura, en la demarcación marina Canaria, con Bárbara Baroa Pérez, del Observatorio de Basura Marina de Canarias. Estamos en Mazarrón, en la demarcación marina Levantino Balear, con José Luis Alcaide y Juan Diego López Giraldo, de Asociación Hipocampus. Estamos en Cádiz, en la demarcación marina sudatlántica, con Alberto, del Centro de Buceo Ocean Addicts. Estamos en Vigo, Galicia, en la demarcación marina noratlántica, con José Luis Gómez y Marisa Fernández, del Centro Tecnológico del Mar, CETMAR.
Las artes de pesca perdidas o abandonadas constituyen un riesgo para la fauna marina, pero también constituyen un riesgo para la navegación y la seguridad en la mar. Se ve claramente cuando es un arte de pesca fantasma, un arte de pesca abandonado o perdido, porque generalmente es una maraña. Lo que vamos a ver es varias boyas juntas y una maraña de sedal, con lo cual claramente no está funcional. Si podemos acercarnos, pues es importante también evitar que el motor esté en marcha y acercar de una manera que la corriente o el viento no nos eche sobre el artefacto. En el caso de la fauna marina es lo mismo, con lo cual solo vamos a efectuar un rescate de tortuga si es un animal que está claramente enmallado. Si el animal no se puede subir a bordo y está claramente afectado, está vivo, se puede rescatar, llamaremos al 112. Se nos va a poner en comunicación con un equipo de veterinarios de uno de los centros de recuperación que tenemos a lo largo de nuestra costa.
Bueno, dentro de las actividades del Observatorio de Basura Marina de Fuerteventura se encuentra la recogida de basuras en fondo. Lo hacemos a través de sinergias con diferentes colectivos, en este caso buceadores recreativos. Una vez salimos del agua, caracterizamos los residuos marinos y separamos lo que es basura marina e independiente de los artes de pesca y lo que proviene de pesca, en este caso, pues pesca de tierra.
Los voluntarios suelen ser buceadores locales. Por ley nosotros debemos planificar la inmersión, nosotros debemos describir perfectamente el lugar donde estamos, debemos saber qué titulación tiene cada buceador y obviamente a qué profundidad puede ir. Muy en cuenta, los seguros de buceo. Somos buceo recreativo, no tenemos competencias de buceadores comerciales.
Desde el Club de Buceo Bacali, pues lo que hacemos nosotros es planificar, cuando se ponen en contacto con nosotros, planificar toda la inmersión con toda la seguridad que conlleva con ello. Nosotros lo que hacemos es limpiar lo que podemos coger con las manos.
Todas las acciones que hacemos con estos colectivos, con estos diferentes colectivos, pues vemos que hay una serie de residuos que no se pueden gestionar o no se pueden reciclar, ¿no? Y tenemos la problemática con los artes de pesca, en estos casos pues los cabos, palangres y demás que nos traen los pescadores, que son basura, las consideramos basura flotantes porque las recogen en aguas interiores, ¿no? El concepto que hemos añadido este año es, ¿y si le empezamos a buscar una utilidad a esto que está viniendo como material? Hemos empezado a hacer diferentes productos, ¿no? De esta red, pues sacamos una red muy parecida, sacamos diferentes cabos, deshilachamos, como pueden ver, pues son 4 líneas, deshilachamos y hicimos pues un gorro bastante completo.
Esto es reciclar y artesanía a la vez.
Nos centramos en los artes de pesca de lanzamiento con caña, sedales, plomos, curricanes, palometillas de estas, anzuelos.
Un buen ejemplo de esto es el proyecto Plumbum, que es el que está focalizado para recuperar todos los plomos que utilizan ellos en los artes de lance para poderlos recoger, y entonces pues el proyecto Plumbum ahí juega un papel fundamental en ese sentido, porque podemos recoger todo el plomo que se ha quedado en el fondo del mar.
Reconocemos la zona, llevamos los detectores y sondeamos a ver si es punto caliente o no es punto caliente. La siguiente es convocar a todo el voluntariado ambiental que tenemos nosotros en nuestra, digamos, en nuestra cartera, y vamos directamente a la zona, a un trabajo un poquito más exhaustivo. Si nos pilla en una zona de red Natura 2000 o zonas de reserva, solicitar los permisos pertinentes para poder hacer la actividad.
Los plomos que hay en cada uno de estos. Estos contenedores están dispuestos en una red de contenedores en toda la región de Murcia, o sea, en este momento tenemos 100 contenedores. Nosotros recogemos ese plomo que está lleno y cuando tenemos una cierta cantidad la llevamos directamente al gestor autorizado de residuos y entra nuevamente en la cadena productiva.
El proyecto Clean Atlantic está financiado por el programa Interreg Espacio Atlántico y tiene como principal objetivo mejorar el conocimiento y nuestras capacidades para prevenir, para monitorizar y para reducir la basura marina, y al mismo tiempo aumentar la sensibilización en torno a esta problemática medioambiental. En el marco de este proyecto estamos realizando un estudio de localización de artes perdidas y abandonadas en las rías de Vigo y de Pontevedra con la colaboración de los clubes de buceo.
Y dentro de las rías de Pontevedra lo que estamos intentando localizar con su ayuda son aquellas zonas donde se han acumulado o han aparecido artes de pesca que están perdidos. A partir de esta información lo que hemos hecho es, con la colaboración de unos buzos profesionales, hacer unas inmersiones de localización y para establecer la posibilidad de su retirada. Entonces procedemos a unos trabajos de preparación para que una vez que se extraigan, con la ayuda de guardacostas de Galicia, se cause el mínimo daño posible tanto en la flora como en la fauna, como también en el sustrato, donde muchas veces ya están fijados.
De la navaja, mariscadores, nos dan aviso y con eso lo que se hace es una evaluación que luego se planea la retirada del mismo.
Debajo del agua pues llevamos un equipo técnico con doble grifería, doble botella, varios sistemas de corte, carrete, incluso boya de emergencia en caso de necesidad, y procuramos evitar en todo momento pues engancharnos, enredarnos y todo eso. Requiere pues tener cierta experiencia en buceo en este tipo de situaciones, dada la complejidad, porque entran un riesgo y un peligro por todas las partes que se puede uno enredar o enganchar, e incluso en el momento que se eleva en este caso una red, pues pueden desprenderse elementos que incluso pueden contener piedras o algo y pueden caernos encima.
Nosotros los centros de buceo nos encontramos con frecuencia artes de pesca o parte de estas artes de pesca en las diferentes inmersiones que realizamos, y bueno, todas nuestras inmersiones son guiadas y los guías tienen instrucciones específicas en estos casos para seguir un protocolo, un procedimiento. Se toman fotos, lógicamente se dan instrucciones también al grupo en el briefing de que no corten, de que no utilicen digamos que no intenten sacar el arte de cualquier manera. Utilizamos la web y en su caso pues ordenamos la retirada con el procedimiento de las autoridades competentes.
Este procedimiento forma parte de los criterios generales para la gestión de artes de pesca perdidos abandonados en Red Natura 2000, Intemares, artes perdidos. Puedes consultar los criterios generales, el inventario de registros o subir tus propios hallazgos en artesperdidos.es.
La contribución financiera del programa LIFE de la Unión Europea.
Pregunta que tengáis que no hayáis querido hacer.
Well, thank you everyone for your participation. If you have any more questions, please feel free to come and talk to us outside. There is another video that we are going to put on now. Please, if you would prefer to leave, feel free. But I would like to explain this video. It was carried out by a study on regeneration after the volcanic eruption in La Palma. The goal is to illustrate the amazing ability of marine environments to recover by themselves. The video is going to be shown, so please feel free to stay if you wish.
Como ven, en tierra las cosas quedan mucho por hacer, pero en el mar se ha recuperado de una manera.
So, while there is a lot left to do, I think this is quite a hopeful image to end on. Thank you. It's lunchtime, but just a final thank you for all of your efforts.